I thought I was tough. Turns out I was injured. It's Concussion Awareness Week. Here's what nobody told me. Hi, everyone. My name is Paris 2. They call me P2. I'm a nutrition and fitness coach, and I work with weight class athletes on performance nutrition. I spent almost 2 decades, 20 years in the world of rugby, and now 7 years in Muay Thai. I have always been a big fan of contact and combat sports. I have also experienced post-concussion syndrome for years. Unfortunately, because at the time, a lot of these things we weren't talking about. Hence, this video and my passion, as we'll dive into a little bit more together in a moment. Obvious disclaimer, I am not a concussion specialist. I am not a medical professional. Everything in this video is from very personal experience, from my curiosity, and it does not replace getting proper professional support. All right, with that, let's dive right in. Concussions can happen to anyone. It can be in your kitchen, it can be walking down the stairs, it can be riding a bike. Of course, if you're doing a contact or combat sport, there's higher risk. I'm going to start with what we used to know, what we know now, and sort of merge in some of my personal stories. The old mindset and what I grew up with. Getting your bell rung was part of the sport, right? We didn't fully understand the longer term consequences. There's only now that we're starting to recognize traumatic brain injury, CTE, which still can't fully be diagnosed. There's still a lot of emerging science on that. If you could walk and talk, you're fine, walk it off. Concussions can only happen if there was a knockout level hit, like if you blacked out. And resting it out, having complete rest in a dark room was the right thing to do until you get rid of all your symptoms. And that tough athletes push through everything. Well, what the science shows us now. Subconcussive hits, so little hits, can accumulate over time. These smaller impacts may not cause any earth-shattering obvious symptoms at the time, but they can compound and create damage. Most concussions actually have nothing to do with losing consciousness, and they don't have to be a direct hit to the head. It could be a hit to the body, creating whiplash. The brain actually needs 7 to 10 days, sometimes way longer, to heal. You may not necessarily feel it. Active recovery beats complete rest for a lot of people, but it's the right balance of them. And being tough and pushing through can take something that could have been a 2-week injury into the 2-year mark. And second impact syndrome, which means getting hit again before you're fully healed, can be fatal. What I missed, the hard truth. The signs that I ignored. So I had persistent fatigue that I just blamed on training or life. I had mood changes that I attributed to stress and being a millennial and the world. I also have a personality problem of asking for help and fully receiving it. The sleep issues that I thought were okay, and cognitive symptoms I didn't really recognize were symptoms. I also had eye pain here, and I didn't fully understand what was happening. There was just a lot of random symptoms. So why I missed it, there wasn't a singular event that I can recall at the time. I think it was 2016, 2017. I did have a colleague that told me, hey, some of those things sound like concussion symptoms. You should see an occupational therapist. And I straight up dismissed it because I made choices with what I knew. The symptoms sort of came on gradually and they compounded. And I have always sort of normalized being this, like, I'm tough, I can take on discomfort. It's normal behavior. And yeah, at the time, we hadn't started to add in as much discussion as we do now, even though I was in the world of contact and combat sports. Retrospect, I think it was the one time I actually was biking home and I kind of tripped off my bike. I had also partially sprained my wrist and my ankle. It was like really silly. I was just biking down the street and kind of plopped like this onto the curb. And I had a helmet. I didn't really think of anything of it, but I continued to go to rugby practice and go to Muay Thai on top of that. So what was the cost of not knowing? 3 years of post-concussion syndrome that significantly impacted the quality of my life. I definitely had sleep issues for a really long time. My already existing anxiety was heightened. My already existing mood swings were heightened. And that really, really fed into what I do. Thought, I'm a professional wellness coach. I should know what I'm doing. And it made me feel like I am failing and that I am not practicing what I'm preaching. Because it's at the same time that I am trying to, grow my business and be a better coach. And I'm having this fundamental clash at the foundation. So I ended up speaking with my family doctor. I saw an optometrist, an ophthalmologist, an allergist, a chiropractor. I got an MRI. I was referred to a neurologist and waited for a year and a half to see one. I had briefly was given a medical marijuana license, all of the above. Ended up finally seeing a massage therapist and a colleague of mine who's a concussion specialist I'll speak to more about in a moment that kind of recognized that I had post-concussion syndrome. And I went and got the proper support then. But that was like a solid 2 years of me not knowing that I was dealing with it. And I probably made it so much worse. Could have been 2 weeks. Now that we know better, we're doing better. And that's the point of this video so I can share with you. Rowan's Law. Let's talk about it. What is that and why it matters to us in Ontario, Canada? Rowan's Law states hit, stop, sit. The whole objective is that if you suspect a concussion, just remove from activity immediately. Rowan's Law came out to educate athletes on second impact syndrome and recognizing concussions. Now, Rowan herself was a young athlete in the world of rugby here in Ottawa, Canada. And unfortunately, she had a brain injury, hadn't healed from it, steps back on the field, and that ends up being fatal. And so, in her honor and her name, Rowan's Law was launched to educate live to do the sport another day. And it is not just about kids, though. It is recognizing that people, humans, need protocols. So what does that mean for athletes? You cannot always tell if someone has had a concussion by looking at them, especially if it's a combat or contact sport. A lot of people are, trying to have that stoic face, that poker face. You have to know what to look for. And when in doubt, when you're not sure, best to sit it out. And it's just a smart practice for everyone, especially youth, of course, but also as adults, because, unless there's like millions of dollars on the line, the majority of us are just doing this for the love of sport. And for the love of sport, let's live to do more of it later. What we know now, the recovery science. When there is a mild concussion, at that moment, after this injury, your brain is less efficient in how it uses fuel. So it gets fatigued faster. It runs out of fuel faster. And that's why you're very exhausted doing simple tasks. It was a lot of effort just to exist, to walk. And you may also be dealing with a lot of other symptoms like light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. Overall, all of your senses are being impacted. This is where I said previously that the complete rest in the dark that used to be something we used to tell people. In recent years, we know that's not correct because it can actually lead to making the symptoms worse by deconditioning your entire system. What I'm really, really happy about is more of the conversation about nutrition. I feel like this was really overlooked. We usually saw this as an afterthought. In general, nutrition has been more of an afterthought, and now we're realizing the role that it plays, but especially when it comes to concussion recovery. If you've ever watched any of my other videos or had any conversation with me, you know that I'm one person that's constantly talking about that food is immoral, to reduce the dichotomous thinking, and to approach everything from moderation. But in this particular context, I do recommend reducing overly processed, ultra-processed, hyperpalatable foods during the recovery because things like pizza, candy, snacks can work against you. They can increase the inflammation, which is essentially what's happening in the brain. And what we're trying to do is just give it the best healing approach. Your whole body's not very efficient right now, so let's just support it. And this is where the research shows higher protein, healthy fats, minimal carbs, more of a keto. Now, keto itself actually was a diet that was for supporting epilepsy. It is the fitness world that sort of took it to also be for weight loss, as we do with all diets. The approach is high protein, healthy fats, minimal carbs. And the carbs portion is really meant to be the complex. So what you would get from fruits and vegetables. And it also depends on the physiology. So for men, you can go way low. You don't need carbs in this context for women around 100 grams max. And why that is because at this point of this conversation, we're not talking about your total daily expenditure and your energy output. You're not training. You just had an injury. You best not be running around doing sport. So you don't need it. What you're trying to do is give your body and brain stable fuel. We don't want spikes in our blood sugar. We want consistency, and we want our body not to be in a roller coaster. We want it to feel safe and supported. And then there is other nutraceuticals and supplements that perhaps we'll be adding. I'm not going to dive into all of them, but a couple that we're aware of is fatty acids. So EPA, DHA, they can contribute to reducing inflammatory markers from head trauma, as well as creatine monohydrate. It can help maintain the brain energy stores during recovery. It's also essential for intracellular hydration. Make sure that you are focusing on the bare minimum of quality protein, quality healthy fats, minimizing carbohydrates, keeping an essential routine for how you're eating, trying to avoid that roller coaster, adding in therapeutic doses of specific high quality nutraceuticals and supplements. And this again is for short term. So all of that to say is, what is the new recovery protocol? Let's keep it very high level and simple. Overall, 24 to 48 hours of relative rest, not complete shutdown. That's essential. We're not just like shutting down in the dark. Of course, you're fatigued, rest. And then what we're working on is the gradual return to light aerobic activity as tolerated, not to push through. This is absolutely essential. If you push a little bit, you're fatigued, you pull back. Sleep and nutrition are absolute non-negotiables as a stress management. If it is not important and it's off your plate, you delegate, off it goes. And the whole other part of this is have professional guidance and not tough it out. Now, there is something called the return to play, and an athletic therapist or someone qualified can take you through the levels of where you're at and the markers managing your symptoms. And this is very, very important because you might think that you're fine, I'm good. Yeah, I'm not sensitive to light and I'm not sensitive to sound, I'm fine. But it's been like 3 days. And you might jump a couple steps because you think you're okay, or you're pushing yourself through and suddenly decide, you know what, I'm going to go back to sparring tomorrow. And perhaps you're just doing things too early. So it's really important to kind of do things in steps and to have an outside, objective, professional viewpoint, because as athletes, the first thing we want to do is be like, I'm okay, I'm fine, everyone, stop flipping out, and then get back to sport. And just rushing for those 2-3 days could very well set you back even more. All right, that was a lot. We're not done yet. Weight class athletes, we got some extra risk factors. Naturally, obviously, if you're taking direct contact to your head or to your body, we all know that this is a risk. But what also increases the risk is dehydration. It can make your brain more vulnerable and the risk of concussions can go up. So if you are cutting weight in competition, that's why it's really, really important to A, do it safely, and B, make sure you're hydrated again when you're in competition to at least reduce one of these risks that we know comes with the sport. Well, I'm not going to go more on about that in this particular video. I have a video I made previously about how to make weight safely without losing strength. I'm going to link it at the end of this video for you to watch because proper hydration is essential for performance and for minimizing the risk of concussions. What to look for before it happens. Okay, know some of the signs and symptoms. Again, you need a qualified professional to diagnose. But if you are a teammate, a friend, a coach, you want to be able to do a very basic concussion assessment immediately, to ask some questions, to recognize some visual symptoms, like, for example, changes in the pupils and dilation of the eyes, and then to be able to make some hard decisions and have honest conversations with training partners, other coaches, guardians, family. Then consider the baseline testing. Then you have something to test against. That's the whole point. Because when you're determining the return to play, return to sport, or return to work, the whole objective is to assess it based on your baseline. So you want the other variables as much as you can to be pretty consistent all of the times. Because then if something does happen, it is a lot easier to recognize the outliers. Whereas myself, like I mentioned, everything was happening simultaneously. I'm super stressed. My anxiety's through the roof. I'm not sleeping. Couldn't tell you routine, trying to build a business. All of them at the same time. And then I have my concussion symptoms, like who knows? Like I didn't know what was going on for so long. And that's also why the people I was working with, like they did all of the right things too. But my optometrist was like, it's not your eyes. My ophthalmologist was like, no. My allergist was like, you're not allergic to things. The MRI didn't show anything because MRIs don't show concussion symptoms. And it took a year and a half until I finally saw the neurologist. But by then I was fine. I just kind of went because I had been waiting. And yeah, that's a whole other story I'll talk about later. But yeah, to summarize, know the signs and symptoms, be able to have the hard, honest conversations, pull someone off the field or out of the ring. Consider baseline testing for sport so you know what the baseline is to return to, and build good habits for brain health, which includes consistent nutrition, consistent sleep, consistent stress management. What do we do when it happens? To reiterate, follow the hit, stop, sit. Remove yourself from activity immediately. Let's not risk it. If you remove yourself, it turns out you're fine, great. You can play again later. But if you don't and you push through, well, get a professional evaluation, especially if you have these lingering symptoms. Like if you notice, sometimes it's not right away. Sometimes we have adrenaline, especially if you were in the middle of a game or in the middle of a fight. Like you're like, I'm fine, I'm fine. As soon as your adrenaline comes down, there might be shifts over the next few hours where the symptoms emerge. And that could be, changes in mood, changes in vision, changes in having a headache, changes in light and sound sensitivity. Go get evaluated. Do not return to contact until you are fully cleared. That is the final step of a return to play. It's not sitting out for a day and then plopping up back into sparring or stepping on the field. There are stages to this. It's the light return to aerobic activity, recovering at baseline, being able to handle a bit more intensity, returning to baseline, being able to, you have to be able to go through them. You're not going to just sit out and then 3 days later pop up in sparring. And make sure that you're, again, prioritizing your activity progression. And that also means hopefully you're able to take a leave from work or have some form of adjustment, conversation, depending on what it is that you do. If you're a professional athlete, that's a different conversation. You have your team to turn to. If you're an amateur and you had a rugby game or a boxing match on the weekend and you're expected to work Monday morning, be prepared to have these discussions and having accommodation or a leave, and also managing your output. Because if you have, let's say, headaches and light sensitivity, sitting for 8 hours staring at your laptop that's completely contradictory for your healing. Now, if you think you have lingering issues, don't assume, go seek support. And if it's not, then great, But if these symptoms are there and you're suspecting something, you could still address them professionally. Now, what happens if you don't address them? The symptoms that could have been resolved within days or weeks can persist for weeks, months, or years. There could be an increased risk of anxiety, depression, or cognitive issues. You are technically at higher possibility of susceptibility to future concussions. There could be potential long-term consequences, and there could be career-ending complications. And some of them are extremely serious. For the purpose of this conversation, I'm kind of talking more about the minor concussions that we can recognize on our own. I am extremely passionate about this, and it is no secret that I have just appeared beside teammates and strangers, people I don't know, not my own business, because I dealt with post-concussion syndrome for years, and I don't want that for people. I was completely dismissive when I was presented with the possibility that I had a concussion, and it cost me a lot. I paid a big price for it, and I don't want that for other people. And at the time also, the conversations changed. I started rugby in 2002. The post-concussion syndrome I'm speaking about was, again, 2016, 2017. And here we are in 2025. Fortunately, there's a lot more emerging research, and there's a lot more protocols and conversations, Rowan's law. And even then, there is more information, but not all athletes are talking about it. What I'm saying is that we can still be tough and smart. They're not mutually exclusive. And none of this is from the perspective of fear mongering. It's not, don't do sports, you can get hurt and get a concussion. It's like, you can get concussion walking down the street. But Our brain affects everything, our training, relationships, our future. So I actually did a deep dive on my podcast with Dr. Isaiah Redford, who's a concussion specialist who years ago had recognized that I had post-concussion syndrome. He really dives into the science. And so I have linked that below in the description box. Please check it out. It is really, really, really cool to listen to. And if you are really focusing on the nutrition, the mindset, and the teamwork, that's exactly what I do through one-on-one coaching as well as in the group cohort. The waitlist is now open. Please check out the description box on how to work with me. In closing, concussion awareness isn't about making sports soft. It's about making athletes smarter. The science is clear that early recognition and proper management make all of the difference. And sometimes, unfortunately, the worst happens, but what we're trying to do is minimize it. We owe it to the next generation of athletes to normalize these conversations. What has been your experience with concussion awareness in your sport? Please comment below and please share this with someone who needs to hear it. And one more time, there are some resources as well as the podcast and my own personal blog story on what happened to me in the description box. Thank you so much for your attention, everyone. Catch you next time.